Bianca.
Hello. Hello, Alex. Hello, stream
doing?
friends. Doing all right.
Doing all right. Yeah.
Yep. It's been a week. It's been a month. I feel the chaos in my aura. But it's so funny when I say like
aura.
Chaotic aura. It's funny when I'll be like, oh, I feel chaotic, but then I look visually, I'm like, I look fine. I also feel like I have like conflicting brands. I was like Adidas. Nike. I was like,
what you gonna
drama.
You can't see any brands on me, but my shirt and pants are the same brand.
A uniform. Okay, got it.
I'm wearing a uniform.
Okay. Yeah. This week we've been doing a lot of like service stuff. So kind of over at Twilio, it's been like
it's Global Impact Week. That's why I was a little late because I was doing my volunteering.
No, I love it. Also, I was like, I said hi to Alex, but hi stream friends.
Hi stream.
Hi stream friends, and also hi video, like our recorded stream friends too.
Oh yeah, the friends in the future friends.
Our future friends. So it's like we have our stream friends, and then we have our future friends. New merch coming soon.
Future stream friends in the house.
Yeah, we're just calling future friends. Oh my gosh, wait, we have the crew all together.
Oh
my god.
Wow.
Wowzers.
We didn't even say his name, and Craig just appeared.
We've summoned.
Wow.
We've summoned is this future Craig or current Craig? JK.
I assume it's current Craig because he's in the chat right now. But yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, we'll bring our guests in a minute. We have the Kelley show as Toe Frog Chris alluded to, and Craig was helped make the original Kelley show, the first one.
Oh, okay, love it.
Yeah.
But yes, okay. So we were talking
Craig
about
from the future, perfect.
Craig, yes. So yes, we were talking about Impact Week. Yeah. So we over in Atlanta, we were doing voter things.
Nice.
So that was kind of cool. And then we made some like care packages. I think it's like really cool having, I don't know, just points and spaces for people to like step back, do some stuff for the community. So that was pretty awesome. How have you been enjoying your volunteering stuff?
It's good. It just happened to fall during this week, but I'm participating in a mentorship program at a local high school, and it's super cool. We got paired up with our mentees today. I got 2 of them, and it's just really awesome to be able to give back, to try to open people's mind a little bit, to just care about what's going on for people. So it's been really interesting, and I'm looking forward to building it more and seeing what people are working on and what makes people tick and getting them excited.
No, this is awesome. Yeah. But yes, as we kind of mentioned, okay, let's see. What are we? I have my elixir. No, not sponsored. Not sponsored. Even though you can see the logo very clearly. I have my. I call it my beauty elixir.
Your beauty elixir.
Yes, which is the anti-inflammatory MSM, and then you got a little collagen, marine collagen, because gotta.
Not bovine, hydrate. Marine?
No, just like, it's like this thing from, I'll find the brand. I'll let you know. But yeah, this is how we keep the skin very moisturized and hydrated. What do you have over in
this is my second tea of the day. I already had my green tea earlier this morning. This is I actually got this particular tea when I was in New York, 2 weeks ago for our thing. And it's a rice scented pu'er. I don't usually like flavored teas, but the rice flavored teas are, it does look a little bit like beef jerky. We're going out to Portland. Maybe I'll bring you maybe I'll bring Craig a little pack of tea. They come like individually wrapped in foil, and they've just got this like the rice flavor is just, it's just the rice scent flavor. It's just, I love it. It's really interesting and unique. So that's what I am drinking today. And I neglected snacks. I'm gonna go hungry for the next however long we're here. So I'm sorry everybody. If I start getting cranky, we know why. Okay, well, less crankiness, more Kelley-ness. On the show, as we mentioned, we have a special guest. You may have known her from the Kelley show. You may have known her from Twilio.
But here we have her on the A/B testing stream. So,
hello.
Yeah. Hi, Kelley.
Hello.
How's it going?
Kelley, what are you drinking?
I've got probably an unnecessary amount of coffee. So this is, I think, my third cup of coffee for the day. I already also, excuse me, I've been talking a lot lately. My voice is, I feel like, scratchy still. I've also got my water bottle. This is, oh yeah, we got to do like the makeup influencer like bit.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sandra. Very, very faint logo here, but North Bay
is there a Twilio logo in there?
No, it's a North Bay Python conference logo.
Ah, okay.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored. I think we sponsored that conference.
That's real.
And they very nicely gave me a water bottle.
There you go.
It's the welcome gift. The welcome gift. So we're all staying very hydrated.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Kelley.
Your first repeat guest.
Really?
Yeah.
That's exciting. Sponsored by Chipotle and coffee. Yeah,
basically.
Is that what we're all getting for lunch today? Some Chipotle?
Good times. So there's a few things. So in terms of what we're going to bother you about today, we definitely want to hear about your authenticate talk. Just like what happened there. There was no drama. Why am I sounding like you fought somebody at the talk?
Speaking of beverages, I'm about to spill the tea in the identity and authentication industry.
Oh my gosh, the dramas. You gotta add a little effect. We have a work milestone. So you had a little work milestone. Guess in the chat, and if you I don't know, guess in the chat, but like don't guess too well. So we have a work milestone. Guess how long Kelley has been here. And then also just kind of curious about like what's happening in the space, like what are folks talking and thinking about? So, okay, let's kick it off. Okay, so authenticate. So you recently kind of spoke at a conference. I think
Craig knew.
Gosh, Craig, you just like, couldn't you give a wrong answer? Anyways, we'll confirm or we'll confirm or deny.
Glomar response, Craig's guess.
That's real. We'll confirm or deny later on in the stream if that answer was correct. You might see by our responses, maybe it is, but we'll let you know. It's not. Yeah. So over at Authenticate, I think one, like, especially with conferences, like, what, why did you why Authenticate, like, why that conference, and then just like kind of what was your experience there? But yeah, just kind of curious.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I work on our user authentication and identity products, and as part of that, I go to a decent number of security conferences, and security is such an interesting industry, right? But you go to a security conference, you might have people that are talking about like hijacking SSH tokens, or people that are talking about physical security, like best practices in securing like physical spaces, or social engineering is like a fun one, right? Like you go to DEF CON and like you might see people talking about how they can like trick the support center agent into giving them information. Security is this really wide field, and the stuff that we work on is very specific to identity and authentication. And I think coincidentally, or appropriately maybe is a better word, there are two conferences in the US that like map specifically to those topics. One is called Identiverse and the other is called Authenticate. They're put on by slightly different organizations, but they focus on like such a specific topic that is what I think about all the time. And so it really makes a lot of sense to go to these, because it's like, if you ever go to a conference, sometimes you're like, oh, okay, like at 2:30 there's a new round of talks, and like, I don't know, maybe like one of these seems interesting. You go to Authenticate and I'm like, oh my God, I need to go to every single one of these talks.
Wow. It's so nice when like it hits and it's like, this is for me.
Yeah, and that's how I felt at Authenticate. It was also really great. There was 3 other people from Twilio there, other product managers that work on our products. And so they're like staying on top of all the industry trends and trying to make, validate our own choices in terms of both how we think about security in terms of securing Twilio, but most importantly, how we're building the products so that when we offer these to all of you, like this is something that like makes sense, is taking best practices into consideration and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I do have a question though about like, I call it like conference culture. So like for in your particular space, like there aren't, like you said, like there aren't that many like focused on like identity authentication, but like, I don't know, like, what do you feel like the role of conferences these days, particularly for the like developer community? Because I do think there's this like, we go on these pendulums, right? Like virtual, hyper in person, but like from your lens, just kind of curious, like how do you think about this?
I mean, I think it's so nice to like see people in person at these conferences, and so much of the value that I get out of them is like having conversations with other attendees and talking about like what they're doing and what like their take on some of the talks, right? And it's really interesting to have that kind of spark of conversation. If somebody might come in and talk about, best practices for X, but then you talk to some company that's like, it's really interesting that they said that, and like I see how that might work for them, but in our case, like this is what we did and this is why we couldn't do that. And so there's that nuance that I feel like you get in like the hallway track, right? That is really nice about being in person. And also like we all work remotely at Twilio, and so I think those opportunities to see folks is really, really powerful.
Yeah. This is actually something, and sorry, little departure, but like it's important to me. I always get overwhelmed at conferences. Kind of like see people and talk to people and all that stuff. So like, how do you manage that? How do you like find people to go and chat with, or like, do you know a bunch of people in the industry so it kind of feels natural now? Or like, do you just randomly like sit next to somebody and start chatting? Like, how's that look? Because that's the hardest
really
part for me at conferences.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think like I'm an extrovert and introvert. So I can turn it on, but sometimes I'm like, oh, this is really hard for me. And I will go like, this is why I like speaking at conferences, is because after you give a talk, people come up to you. You don't have to start the conversation. But in this case, I was, my talk was in the afternoon of day 2 of 3. So there was a lot of conference before that. I went to the speakers dinner and which happened like the night before the conference started, and it was really overwhelming because especially among speakers there's a lot of people that knew each other and I didn't know anyone there. So I ended up having a really good conversation with like one person that I met near the water cooler. It was literally like water cooler chat. We talked for like 45 minutes, and even in this context, like we worked on very different things. Like I work on consumer authentication, he works on workforce identity, which even in a conference that's as focused as this, there's still those differences, right? But like we still had a really good conversation and it was nice. And I feel like sometimes that's how I think about it, is if you don't necessarily need to have like a conversation with everyone, but like I feel like I met somebody cool that I'm excited to see at future events.
That's really cool. That's
Shout
like
out
my
to
worst.
Aman.
Nice. That's like my worst nightmare is being somewhere where I feel like everybody knows each other and I don't know people. I hate it.
Yeah. I mean, there's what's the Pac-Man formation that I always try to do. Have you heard this thing?
No, what's that?
Where if you're standing in a group at a conference, and I think this is like really powerful, is like you are having a good conversation with people. You basically want to leave like the Pac-Man mouth open so that there's like space for someone to come into the conversation. I've heard
I like
other descriptions for it, but I like that
no,
one.
That's cool.
We had a question from, it's so funny, the colleague. We had a question from Toe Frog. Like, cause she feels so serious and unserious at the same time. Okay, but Toe Frog, aka Chris. So has there been a resurgence of people attending in-person conferences? Just from kind of your observation.
That's really hard to say because like I used to do so many conferences pre-COVID and now I don't do very many conferences. So I don't know if I'm the best person to ask about that. It feels like it's back. Like, it feels like there's a lot of in-person events happening. It feels like people have decided they don't care about COVID in the same way. Like, I don't want to say that like COVID's over because it's still very much out there, but yeah, you don't like have the same kind of precautions that you were seeing in like 2021.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've only gotten COVID once, and I got it at a conference.
Yeah. I like how what Craig says. SF forgot about COVID when AI showed up.
Basically, wow. That is priorities. We the order of priorities. No, that's real.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right. So recently you celebrated a milestone that Craig Tryhard, Craig who tried too hard, told us. Craig told us.
Trying is cool. Stop mocking him.
I'm not. No, trying is great.
Cool kids try.
Yes.
He knew, maybe.
Yeah, he knew in his heart. So yeah, no. But you celebrated a work milestone of 7 years, and truly, thank you, Craig. Hashtag thank you, Craig. Not sponsored. This came from the heart. So work milestone of 7 years. Like, one, how does that feel? How does it feel to not get a bronze shoe? Do they give you anything?
She's got a bronze shoe back behind her.
No, you got your bronze shoes at 5, but like at 7, no, you got a bronze shoes at 5. No, listen, people, you get your bronze at 5, but like there's this in between gap. Like they don't acknowledge the 7. So like,
I think the next one is you get a pizza box at 10.
Yeah, but like 7 years matters, right? So I guess, anywho, whatever. So at 7 years, how do you feel? How do you feel? What's going on?
I feel good. I mean, the world is much different than it was in 2017 when I started at Twilio. The company is much different than in 2017 when I started at Twilio. So I think it's the longest I've ever been anywhere, and that's a really cool feeling to like see the progression of things. But then I think there's like also I've gotten to meet both of you in person, but there's like a lot of people that I haven't gotten to meet in person still, and that's wild. Like there was 2 product managers that were at this conference that I work with pretty closely, and it was like, oh yeah, first time, cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's real. No, you still continue to like discover folks. Alex, do you have any questions about the 7-year journey?
It's wild to think about for me. Bianca and I have both been here like 2.5 years, and this is the longest I've ever worked somewhere too.
Really? I mean, I think I hit my longest tenure at Twilio when I got to like 3 years. So.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't.
How has so like I know you said your role changed a bunch like during COVID, like you changed things and you just weren't going to conferences as much, but like how have you seen, because you started as an evangelist, right? Like that was your first, like
my title has technically always been the same. So I was brought in, Twilio acquired Authy in 2016 or 2015. I can't remember the exact year. And I was brought in to help bring Authy into like the self-service developer market. So Authy was much more of a like sales-driven business. And they were like, what if we had like a developer-focused idea behind this? And so a lot of my early work on Authy was building tutorials, fixing the documentation, working with the API team around making things like what is now our Verify API and arguably our most successful self-service API these days, which I get to take some credit for, but not all the credit by any means. It's been a 7-9 year journey of trying to make that something that is very useful for folks. But that was kind of the area that I was brought into. And that has changed over the years in terms of like what the focus has been in terms of how the team is working on things. Lately we've been looking more at authentication methods beyond SMS. That is the reason that Twilio originally acquired Authy is because people were using Authy APIs, which was a wrapper around Twilio programmable messaging to send SMS one-time passcodes, right?
Okay.
And so Now there's a lot of other ways that you can do authentication, whether that's like other OTP channels, like RCS is like a big one that people are interested in right now. Email with the SendGrid acquisition, that kind of thing. But also these kind of like other channels that don't have to do with OTPs, like passkeys.
Cool. I have a question, and then we have a good question in the chat. You mentioned RCS. How does RCS, like 2FA or OTP, how is that different than normal SMS?
So RCS is it's not like telephony in the same way, and so because it's rich text, it provides a different path for the message to get delivered to people. So you don't necessarily have to have the same reliance on the telephony channels that you would with SMS. So one of the features that we actually have with Verify now is like we'll automatically fall back to RCS if an SMS fails in certain countries.
Got it. But, I guess I didn't realize that. I kind of thought it was like another standard on top of SMS, kind of like MMS is. But it's a whole nother delivery mechanism, because I guess it's through the internet. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. RJ had a great question, which is, have you seen customer behavior change around user authentication in your time here?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like I have been in a lot of the conversations from the provider side of things, and we've seen the conversation change from we really need SMS OTPs as a second factor for people that are using passwords. And so I think there was a lot of this idea that passwords are insecure, and we've had I think a lot of people like are pretty bought into that idea. Like I don't think anyone's like fighting for the idea that passwords are a great authentication method. I would say RCS is similar to iMessage, but it's more of an open standard. Is how I would think of. OTT is over the top, is what OTT stands for, just answering Brent's other question. And now I think like more companies are moving towards using SMS or other OTPs or other passwordless authentication as the first factor. So a lot of places that you'll log into now, they don't ask you for a password. They might send you a magic link or send you a one-time code to your email or your phone, because that is for a lot of people easier, and it's more secure in a lot of ways too, because we've seen like all of these passwords end up in data breaches and that kind of thing as well. And so from like the consumer behavior side of that, I feel like a lot of people are more used to SMS OTPs than they probably were 7 years ago. It's so common now that people are used to like getting these messages and what to do with them. In that time, things like iOS autofill has become a feature. Same with Android, like the autofill APIs that allow you to not even have to open your messaging app to fill something in if you're receiving it on mobile. So nice. Like that didn't exist 7 years ago, right? Like, and it's funny to think about like how far we've come in that area.
I feel like a lot of people use the magic links. The one that I noticed using it by default first was Slack.
Yeah.
I feel like early on, Slack was like magic link, no password, magic link.
Yeah.
Which for someone who has like multiple emails and is never sure which one I logged in with, it's a challenge.
the little dings. Okay, I had a thing that came to mind actually with the customer behavior change. So I've asked a few folks on our team this question, right? Like, why should developers care about the business? So that's like part of the question, and the business, just the business, like the business side of things. But the other thing that I'm also curious about from your specific end, which is like, how has the business side of authentication and identity like evolved and just shifted, right? So I guess maybe the first question is just like, and you could answer them in whatever order, but I'm just kind of curious about seeing your perspective of that.
Yeah, I'll answer the business shift question, because I think this is another interesting thing that, like, are y'all familiar with the idea of SIM swapping? So yeah, like somebody can steal your SIM card. And this is one of the things that people were always like really skeptical about of using SMS as an authentication method. It generally requires like somebody to specifically target you. Most people aren't going to be victim to SIM swaps like very frequently. There's all these things like, yes, it's a concern. But when I used to go to conferences and talk about SMS authentication, like the biggest pushback I would get would people being like, oh, but like SMS is so insecure, like SIM swapping, I can steal your SMS codes. And I'm like, yeah, you could, like, that's fair, but like the user experience benefits make it nice. And like, that's, if people are going to use it, that is helpful and more helpful than passwords, right? The conversation that we're having now is so much more often around SMS is expensive. So let's find an alternative to SMS that is not as expensive. And that's the conversation that I was like hearing a lot at Authenticate, of people looking for alternatives that weren't going to cost them as much. And so I think that's where security as a cost center and not as a like, oh, we're willing to throw money at this problem to keep our users secure like thing. People want to eliminate the costs as much as possible there. And I think that's a big part of the business. Part of that is SMS pumping as a fraud mechanism has been really prominent in the last year or two. Twilio Verify has a good solution for that, and we prevent it a lot if you use the Verify API. But this is something that people are getting hit with, and they're seeing their SMS bills getting run up really high. And it's not like you're paying for legitimate authentications in that case. You're paying for some scammer that has a deal with some shady MVNO and is getting a cut of the profits.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned like people used to say it was secure, and now there's a cost consideration. Has the economics of this changed in any way, or is SMS pumping the main reason for that? Or is it just like companies are so much bigger, they have so many more users, are doing this so much more, the cost center it feels more important? Like what is it that's making
part
this?
of it is SMS pumping. I think there's also like SMS has gotten a little bit more expensive depending on the countries that you're operating in. It's also more expensive. Like one of the keynotes at Authenticate was from the CEO or CTO, an executive at Air New Zealand, and he was talking about the cost of SMS. And it's like, yeah, SMS is expensive in New Zealand. Like it's not like a cheap place to send SMS. And so I think like some of that is as we become like a more global society too. Like, if you were used to only sending messages in your country and now you're sending them globally, that can get pricey as well. But I do think that like SMS pumping is the big one that we've seen, and people trying to eliminate that.
And do passkeys make all this talk to obsolete? Like, are passkeys just like, do you need to worry about like 2FA or anything like that with passkeys as well, or did they kind of make it a little different?
It's funny that you asked about 2FA specifically. There's actually some regulation in Europe that does not consider passkeys enough for satisfying 2FA, and so there's like some pushback against that. But from a security standpoint, I do believe that like passkeys provide plenty of security, like equivalent security as you would from like a password and SMS standpoint. In terms of like, do they solve every problem out there? No, of course not, because like you can't use a passkey in every situation and people will still end up losing them. And so you're going to need like fallback options. Like the goal is to get rid of passwords, and the goal is to get rid of like some of these less secure methods. But the trick with consumer authentication is always like, how do you keep this usable in a way that people will actually like keep themselves secure? And passkeys are a really, really good step forward, but they're not the silver bullet.
We have a good question in chat. Let's see.
Yeah. I'll pull it up. RJ's?
Yeah, I don't have, I was like.
I got you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, question from RJ. Going back to additional auth methods, how are people thinking about frictionless auth, i.e. silent network auth and voice biometrics? Also, how are people looking to move away from voice biometrics due to the rise of voice cloning?
Yeah. So I think what RJ is talking about is some of these verification methods that happen in the background without you ever even knowing that it's happening. We have a product called Silent Network Authentication that pings your SIM provider. It uses the same APIs that they use for billing. So when you are like on a call, they're like, okay, I know that Kelley's making this call to Alex. We'll take that out of her minutes, right? So they have a way to do that if you're connected to the cellular data to know who you are and that like it's you that's using that SIM card. So there's like great background methods there. Silent network auth is great when it works. It doesn't work everywhere. And so I think that's like the downside with that method, right? Like you can't use that 100% of the time. So you need backups. Voice biometrics, right? Like, I can authenticate with my bank because they recognize my voice and I said some passcode at some point. But I think the question is apt because with AI, like things like voice cloning are really easy to do now. And we've also seen a lot of evidence that like you can bypass these voice biometric detectors, and also that they can be kind of racist. So like there's reasons not to always use those. What I think a lot of companies end up doing with some of these background methods though is that they use them instead for step up authentication. So they might say, okay, this is pretty good. Like I think this is this person, but like I'm going to use this to determine whether or not I need to like do additional authentication, or if I'm going to only send like an OTP to this person, or if I'm going to like force them to like go through like multiple steps on top of this. And so because it's frictionless, because it's behind the scenes, you can use some of these as signals to say, cool, I'm going to trust this for this time, or cool, like I'm going to trust that this is Bianca's voice so that like she can get her bank account balance. Like that's fine. But then if Bianca wants to then transfer $10 million out of her account to Kelley, great, go ahead and do that. Once she provides additional authentication.
No, I was cracking up.
If it's to Kelley, no additional authentication.
Yeah,
otherwise, let's give additional authentication.
They'll be like, she's on stream. They've been on stream together, of course. It's but no, I'm cracking up because there have been times that I've called in and I'm like, Bianca, you sound suspicious. Like nothing about this. Like, and what will happen is like I could tell that I sound suspicious. Like I've answered all the questions, but I was like, well, which email do you need? Do you need this other email? But I was like, I don't have this other email. But then this is a zip code here, and then I'm like in some other foreign country. I was like, Bianca, to the computer, you don't sound like yourself. So when you were saying that, I was like, well, been there. So my goal a lot of times is don't sound suspicious. Sometimes that works.
Suspicious. And then as soon as you say
I'm not hiding anything, I promise.
At all.
You don't need to look in my bag.
Yeah, I am the Bianca. Yeah.
Stephen Nicks got it right. I never feel more insecure about who I am than when I'm trying to prove who I am.
Yes. Oh my God. That sounds so profound and deep. Wow. Needs to be on a mug. Okay, great. I do.
Well, let's get. Yeah, in a minute we'll get to Roberto's question. But
I gave a talk. I called, I think 50 contact centers and figured out how they did contact center authentication. And it was like so scary so often because I would get everything from people being like, okay, hi Kelley Robinson, to confirm your identity, can I have your full name?
And fun.
Like, you just gave me my full name. Or like, can I get your date of birth? Okay, cool, date of birth. Can I have you confirm that these were your last 3 most recent addresses? Yes. And they will like read it out to you.
The joys.
Yeah.
Roberto has had a question. Alex.
Passkeys seem to end up tied to a particular browser or particular machine. MFA on a mobile device or a YubiKey seems more sustainable for a customer. Tell me what I'm missing, please.
Yeah. So passkey are like, there's elements of passkeys that are stored in different places. The private key that you end up storing to use as the authentication device gets stored on your browser or in a password manager. And this is also what can be stored on that YubiKey device. The trick with modern consumer passkeys is that there's an idea of a synced passkey. And so this is where if you end up saving it to your browser has a profile. And if you log into that profile on that browser on different devices, they will be able to load your passkeys. This is the same idea as if you're storing your passkeys to the iCloud keychain. That is available on every device that you have signed in with iCloud keychain. I use 1Password for storing all of my passwords and my passkeys everywhere that I'm logged into 1Password and able to pull up that extension or application. I have access to my passkeys across devices. That being said, there are certain circumstances where Certain sites may not allow you to use synced passkeys, and they might, there are flags when you set up passkeys that allow you to see if a passkey is a synced passkey. And you might have a situation where for whatever reason the passkey doesn't sync. Like you might not be signed into that browser profile, or you might not have a browser profile set up for something like that, and so it only ends up on the device where you saved it. And that's where I think some of this gets confusing, is because we end up with thinking that we have this authentication solution that is usable across devices, but it isn't always. And that's where I think like these fallback methods then become necessary.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think like the interesting thing about that question too is, though, inherent in that is like you need a device with you. Like you either need to have that YubiKey device or have that phone. It's just a matter of like, is the phone an easier device? That's why I personally love password managers, is like there. Yeah. And then also the side of like sharing it, like being able to like share like, oh, you know, I may or may not share like Netflix. I actually don't share Netflix anymore, but like, you know, Hulu with my family, and like we can share those passwords, or like the things I share with my wife. Like we get to share those on the password manager, and it makes life a little easier. But like, yeah, I hear you. I don't think there's like one perfect answer, because there's no way to like truly always authenticate people.
Yeah, there is like a new API for doing like credential exchange as well that they're working on, so that if you've saved like your passkey, your private key for the passkey in your password manager, you can send it to like a browser password manager or something like that. I don't know all of like the technical specifics behind that and how they make it secure, but the idea behind that is they want this to not be something where you're like locked into a specific like password manager.
Yeah. That makes sense. And then a follow-up question from Revertables. So if someone got access to my browser profile, they could emulate my passkey.
Yeah. So there's the access to the passkey where it's stored on the device, but then part of the passkey spec is there also has to be like something around like the gesture for proof of user verification. And so that's where you usually have to either end up with typing in a PIN or using a like screen unlock, so Face ID or your fingerprint or something like that, depending on how it's set up. There are circumstances where like that might not be required depending on how the authentication has been requested. But the way that I think about that though, like if somebody's on your computer already or like has logged into your browser profile, like then you might be screwed in other ways.
Yeah.
Like,
but this is like right though, like if everything is stored on your iCloud keychain and someone gets access to your iCloud keychain, like yeah, they have access to all your pass keys, but like yeah, you're probably going to have other problems too.
If someone has access to your email, then all of a sudden, yeah, they can get all your 2FA stuff, like magic links. Like, yeah, I hear you.
Oh man, delete my profiles is in my will. Like digital estate planning is such a trip.
Honestly, that's the one reason that I'm a little unhappy with 1Password is they haven't set that up yet.
They haven't. It's so frustrating. I went through this all last year and it was number one request, 1Password. I love you. This is me directly talking to 1Password. Please add handoff for digital estate planning.
Yeah. We can't add the stream library. No, yeah. When you're saying
stream libraries, it's open to everybody.
Yeah.
Stream or Steam librage?
Steam. I thought you said stream. Steam libraries are like that. My Amazon Kindle, like I got a Kindle when I was still a teenager living with my family, my parents, and like I can't get rid of my Kindle account. It's still linked to my mom's. I don't like, what am I supposed to do? I have so many books on there. We have like thousands of books.
Yeah, it's the digital side, like, and this stuff is like very real. Like luckily, it's so interesting. So like, unfortunately, like my aunt recently like passed, but before kind of everything went down, like my cousin was very intentional about kind of getting a lot of her info on like 1Password, but she's like like some of the things she didn't have, but like it was the only way she could do it was to have like this shared account, and it's messy. right? Like it just creates a sense of messiness. Also, I think even just like different people need access to different things, right? So I do think like it just might be interesting for them to really think about that from even just like, I don't know, the way Okta, even company, I think of a person as like a company sometimes, which is like, this person needs access to this part of the entity, and then this person might just need access to the Netflix passwords or what have you. But I do think like you learn a lot about like just digital stuff. Like even currently, like I still pay my dad's cell phone bill. And mind you, my dad's like past like 3 years. And I'm like, I need 2-factor just in case there's like, it is so unfortunate, but I'm like, just in case there is an account that like I need to like access, but so much of his stuff he put on for phone, right? Like 2-factor. So I was just like, what if some random person gets all the 2-factor that goes randomly to this, our Ring device? So like, it just got a little chaotic. So I just need to, I just feel like they don't make it helpful for folks to kind of manage these things. But anyways.
I mean, it's why like, I feel like there was a wave of people that were mocking those like password books, like notebooks where people would literally like write down all their passwords. But like, I think about that from like, we're talking about like digital estate planning. How helpful would that be if you literally had a physical book of everybody's accounts when you needed to manage that in the case of their passing? And I mean, it's kind of where it makes a lot of sense.
It's kind of come down to that. I will not confirm nor deny, but I've had to create a book because trying to get elderly folks, sorry, mom, called you old. But trying to get elderly folks in alignment to some digital things, like it can get a little complicated. It just, wow, Craig, sorry, I didn't mean it like that. Sorry, mom. But trying to get them aligned. Like, also there's like the language barrier. My mom's like, why am I putting my passwords in here? And like, I don't know. It's just, sometimes I wonder, like, I'm like, are the folks that work in these spaces, are they talking to people? Do they like, who's building these things?
Yeah, I think that's tough. And it's also like a newer problem, right? Like we're only now getting to the point where this is becoming an issue. Like, like,
really, like
I'm thinking
10 years.
My grandfather has the physical spreadsheet that he prints out and writes he's got like a book. And then like my mom uses a password manager and like, but I think there's like a generational thing that's happening and it's just going to become more and more important. And I also wonder, are like some of these things going to like survive? Like, like Robertables, are you going to like pass your stream library off to somebody? Is someone like, is my like mom's Kindle, like Amazon account going to like be a family heirloom because of all the books we have on it? Like,
I'm just saying,
it's weird stuff to think about.
It is.
Yeah, I'm like trying, like my grandpa and grandma both passed. It was really sweet, actually, in like a really kind of morbid way, but they like passed within 3 months of each other. But that was in 2012. And like, this was not a problem that we had to deal with then. Like that was, a little over 10 years ago. And I know they had some digital accounts, but it was the type of thing where like, even if they technically had a digital bank account, like, the estate like planners ended up just going down to the local branch and talking to them because that was how they actually managed it.
There, you are speaking to something that I kind of like, I struggle sometimes with the digital, like everything being digital. Like I get it, but also like, I do think like, while it does make things accessible, right? Like kind of not needing to go to a branch to do something, but I do think like the relationship with the user. And I don't know, maybe as I'm like kind of throwing things out there, it's like, how can our digital platforms kind of re-represent the relationship, right? Like the relationship that you used to have in a branch. And like, not to plug Twilio, but I do think Twilio has an opportunity to like, is this sponsored? Twilio sponsors. They sponsor this.
Technically sponsored the stream.
They sponsor this.
Twilio does stream. We're streaming on Twilio.
Sponsored, but not pushed. This is from my own heart. But I do wonder, like, kind of recreating the relational aspect of security of of authentication of identity.
Yeah.
Because it's like there is this, I don't know, curious your thoughts, y'all.
There's actually a really interesting example of this, of using social proof as an account recovery mechanism. And so if you are someone that has an Apple account, you can designate recovery contacts. So these are people you might have in your contacts already and say, if I lose access to my device, contact Alex and he can vouch for me to get back in. This is something that you have to set up. Facebook also used to have this, and they actually got rid of the feature, which I think is really interesting. I just don't know if like not enough people were using it, but yeah, like they had something similar. But I do think that like social proof side of things makes sense. I think like this is something that when you use certain platforms for a work context, that happens more often. Where if like I get locked out of like my corporate Twitch account or something like that, like they can see, oh, I can, contact Bianca to let Kelley back in because they both came from that Twilio.com domain. So like there's that, we can have that like back channel conversation, right? Or something like that.
No, I like that's actually good to hear. That kind of like they're merging the two, because I do think sometimes like security, like authentication practices or even identity things, I was like, are you engaging with real people? Like who
I mean, that's a challenge, right? We're all trying to figure that out.
Right.
Real
it
people
used to be
or
like
bots.
the banker knew you. Now it's like, how do you authenticate yourself? When you were talking about physical things, Bianca, I thought you were about to go talk about how like you have like gold stash under your bed or something like that. So I'm glad it went the way it did. yeah.
No. I keep the gold. No, I don't really. No, I'm not keeping the gold anywhere.
Yeah. RJ had a good question. So curious how contact centers, virtual assistants, etc., can help make the process better, as it might be a distressing time for people. So how can we make it more seamless? I think this goes back to a lot of the like KYC. Like how can you like know the customer well to like authenticate them and make them feel safe, and then also make it easier to do the things that you wanted that they want to do.
And I mean, this is something that like most companies are trying to like figure out all the time, because I've seen a lot of estimates in terms of how much this costs companies. A lot of times over 50% of call center volume that companies are getting is related to account lockouts. And especially depending on the business that you're in, like that's money that people are not spending on your platform. That's opportunities that are missed because people can't access their stuff. And so TD Bank gave a presentation at Authenticate that was talking about how they every time somebody calls their contact center for an account lockout, it costs them $7. And so like they're in the method of trying to like figure out how to decrease that cost. I've seen estimates as high as $70 for an account lockout.
Wow.
And it's a thing that's costing companies a lot of money. And so there's a lot of interest in making that process self-service. And that's where like you can get a password reset email, and that's fine for a lot of services. But then like once you get to the situation where you've got MFA enabled, where you lose access to everything, somebody was talking about how they had to call Google to get access to their account. Like that's something where you have to balance that like security and usability side of things, right? Of maybe this is costing people more money, but like the cost of an account takeover is even higher to prevent that.
Yeah, that's such a fine balance of like, of course it's me, just let me in, but it's like there's a reason we're not letting you in. It's for your own benefit. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think some of that too is like, is there a way that we can make this easier for people so they don't have to talk to a call center agent? And then if they do, like, how are those agents like trained so that they aren't making somebody's day worse?
Yeah. Big part. How can you not make someone's day worse?
But yeah, I mean, also like just being nice to the call center agents is they're always having a bad day because like people are mean to them.
I know. I've like learned to check myself, because I'll get frustrated when things aren't right, and I'll be like, I know it's not you. I'm sorry. It's not you. I'm just pissed.
Yeah. I know this is not your fault, but
I'm mad.
Look at that. There you go, Roberto's. If you make good security too friction filled, they will cheat on it and become less secure.
Who is they in this context?
I assume it's
the call center agent.
No, or is it the people? Like Yeah. I guess that's a good question. Because if you're filling with
they?
friction, sometimes there's not a ways around it. But it's an
Yeah.
interesting idea.
The royal they.
The
Everyone.
royal they.
Everyone. Somebody.
The royal. Yeah. Man.
But yeah, I mean, this is like I've encountered this before. I like mentioned that like research I did when I called 50 contact centers, and some of that was funny, right? Because if they were like, okay, I need you to like confirm your email, and I'm like, okay, KROB, and like they, will start and like, like K Robinson at Gmail, and I'm like, oh yeah, that. Like, if even things like that, if they have the information in front of them, they will be able to then see like and give hints towards what the right answer is.
There you go. It would have almost been interesting if like you did it for somebody else where you like vaguely knew some stuff about them, but still saw if you could get in, because that would be like a very scary.
Yeah, there's like legal implications there, but if you give me permission, I can try to.
Yeah, I was gonna say like with right. This feels like a reply all thing where it's like you can hack me, sure. It's
So I kind of okay. All right, Okay, I'm not encouraging fraud, but I as a child of
sentences that start that way. I'm not encouraging fraud.
I'm really not helping my case today. Like first I'm talking about like don't be suspicious. Now I'm like I'm not encouraging fraud. Is Bianca even on stream? Is this another version of Bianca on the stream? Okay, so one thing that comes to mind with this though is like as the child of an parent, having parents that were immigrants, like I was my mom sometimes, and I've been my dad. And I do wonder, like, like, okay, I'm admitting to like some of these things, but like I've had to because I know her information, there was the language barrier sometimes on some of these calls. And it's like, on one end, you don't want it to be too loose. I will say shout out to Social Security Administration for being like, no, we need to, you are not, you don't sound like you're XYZ age. They were very intentional about like, no, but some of the other places, they kind of let me in. And there was a part of me that's like, I was a little grateful for the loose security because like, like the other option was just like my mom, like my parents just kind of needed me to do certain things for them. But I guess I'm curious from just like, even kind of some of those external use cases, like security for the authentication and identity for child of immigrants, those who might be in caregiving roles, right? Like kind of taking care of an elderly parent, like beyond, yes, we have things like power of attorney for once a person gets to like, once we get to like
now, that, we're like, we need to like encourage your parents to get power of attorney because you can't get around that in medical situations, legal situations. But
so it's like I think like the digital, like the
what's like, the digital equivalent of that?
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious, like, I don't know, like I think as a child of immigrants, and I have a lot of friends that relate. Because we are taking on, but also I'm not trying to break the law, because these are hypotheticals, of course. Said on
I mean, stream. I think this is where like it depends on the business you're in, right? Like I'm trying to think like Twilio.com, like when would we ever need like somebody to vouch for like somebody else in that situation? Or if they do, then it's probably through like the workforce relationship.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a B2B. It's different for B2B versus B2C.
Right. And so then in the B2C use case, like I'm sure there's lots of like B2C companies that like don't necessarily need that too. But like I think there's definitely like certain industries where whether, you are going to need the legal side of it, like financial services, they might go ahead.
Okay. The thought is flowing. Yeah. Okay. The thought is flowing. Okay. Because actually what I'm thinking about is like, an exec with a personal assistant, right? Like that person is very embedded into the account. But I do think, especially as folks are thinking about virtual agents, like things damn, we got so far without talking about AI. Damn it. Damn.
Ding, 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 ding. It's 66 minutes and AI dropped.
Well, I can redirect us back to answering Robertable's latest fun fact question though. So he says the reason AWS doesn't return a 404 code is the attack vector is to find the lack of existence of a thing. Instead, they return a 403 forbidden. And that's an interesting choice that AWS has made, because when you think about it, GitHub has made the exact opposite choice. So if you try to access a GitHub repository that exists, but you are not logged in, they will 404 instead of return a 403. And so that's like an interesting use case in terms of like how different companies have chosen to solve this problem based on the different attack vectors. And that, might make sense for GitHub for whatever reasons they've decided, like having a URL of a live repo when you have an SSH key is really dangerous. But yeah, I don't really have more insights there, other than it's complicated.
No, that's real.
There you go.
Yeah, I think the more specific question I had was around like, I think we're trying to offload a lot of things, and like whether it's virtual agents and things like that. Like I was like, I already popped the AI. So whatever, we're here. But I think like, we're offloading a lot of these things to like, hey, we want them to kind of own like some of the conversations and like a lot of the automation. But I think like how folks are thinking about that, right? In the sense of just like,
yeah, I just thought of a good example. Like, let's say that you eventually get to the place where we have agents that are managing like our travel for us, like an AI agent. I might want different levels of security. Like maybe that AI agent can book a flight under a certain dollar amount, but only if I give it permission or something like that. Or maybe there's like, if it's spending money, it has to give permission. But like, I want the AI agent to be able to like change a seat without getting permission from me. So it's almost like there's like a scaled thing that we're going to have to figure out for like, what can I let this AI agent do?
Yeah.
Where is it not allowed to go? And where do I have to give it confirmation?
And what you're talking about is the difference between authentication versus authorization.
Yes.
And this is like an entirely separate class of problems, right? Of like, this is, classic example on Twilio.com. Like you have a Twilio.com account. We're all on the same, like under the same team under the same account said managing a project. Like some of us might have more permissions to do things than other people. And that's all about authorization. Even though we're all logged in, we've all been authenticated. You might be able to like add and delete users, whereas I might not be able to. And there's entire different like vendors and classes of security companies that manage that problem on top of like the authentication bit of it.
Yeah. But we haven't had to deal with that in our personal lives, and we're going to have to at some point.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. My brain. I love when we talk to you, because I'm just like, it's so exciting because there's like the human aspect of it, but then there's like the technical aspect of it. And then there's like the society aspect of this, right? Which is just like having to do more stuff with like, even this aspect of like authorization. Like I used to get annoyed of like, all right, do you authorize us to do X, Y, or Z? Like and I'm like, I don't want to have to tell you, yes, do this. No, don't do this. Yeah. Like, but anyways, okay. RJ had a question.
Yeah. It wasn't a question. It was just a good point, which is, how do you flag fraudulent suspicious activity with virtual agents? It's a super difficult problem. I don't know.
I'm like, if that's a question, I do not have the answer.
Right. That's why I said it was a great point. It's just showing that this is a challenge.
Yeah.
Gotcha. No, yeah, because it's like we're making, we're trying to make very intelligent tools and systems. But okay.
I mean, because I just remember talking, like, I remember hearing Dom give a talk. See if I say Dom, will he show up? No. And I remember hearing Dom give a talk where he talked about how, like, in the early days of API stuff, like we changed how a website communicated with an API and how it authenticated and all this stuff, and it's kind of the same for the AI. So I feel like there is some precedent for this, because like how where people are accessing things from and so on and so forth. But it's a tough one. I don't really know what I think things are going to be weird.
Yeah. RJ, if you figure out the answer to that, let us all know.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yep. That's next stream,
If you figure out the answer to that,
start a company RJ, and sell it for $1 billion.
Yeah, we'll become your champions.
Yeah. Basically. Essentially. We're letting you know now.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're diving everywhere. So okay. I know we've dropped the word like passkeys a few times, like, but like, can you give us like the official definition? Like, how would you describe passkeys?
Okay, so A passkey is kind of like if you had a key to your front door that was different to every door of your house, and then you were the only one that was ever allowed to like use that key. And what I mean by that is that passkeys are scoped for different websites. So they are little secure credentials that only will ever work for the website they were created for. And that's different than something like a password where you might use like Bianca@me.com, password 123456 for every website that you ever log into.
How'd you know Bianca's password?
I know, you saw my face lit up. I was awkward. Update password.
Well, and passwords are problematic because then if I like know that about you or guess that about you, then I can get into like every site that you've ever used that for. Passkeys, even if I get access to it, and this goes back to the earlier question too of like, so if somebody gets access to my like private key, can they log in as me? And like, the answer is still sometimes no, because you need that like biometric authentication on top of it to unlock the use of the passkey.
Yeah.
So it has to be used by you and it has to be used on the site where you used it. And so that's the other thing is if like for whatever reason your private key got leaked for twitch.com, it's not going to be the same thing that you could use even if it was the same like username. That it would be for Twilio.com. And so it's scoped to a specific site. The other thing on top of that is if somebody then like creates like Twitch with like 2 H's.com and tries to then steal your credentials by getting you to input them there, it's not going to work because the passkey only works on the domain where it was registered. And so the way that it does this is using asymmetric cryptography, which sounds really fancy, but it is a fancy way of saying that it's like a more secure credential that then can't be phished, which is pretty cool.
Nice. It can't be phished because you would only ever try it. Like you can't spoof the site that it would be on.
Yeah, you can't spoof the domain.
Yeah. I'm glad for that because I feel like that's the main thing that phishers use. It's like, like Twilio at givemeyourpassword.com. Wait a second. Doesn't seem right.
Twilio with 2 L's.
Yeah.
Well, with like a logo that's like has an extra,
it's got 5 little dots in the middle.
Dots.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's funny. So I kind of think about like on my house, like on there's a door in my house where we have I have a thumbprint and a keypad. And in theory, the thumbprint is more secure because someone would have to steal my thumb, which I really hope no one ever steals my thumb. Sorry, got gross. But like, so in theory, that's more secure because like anyone could have the password. Like, yeah, I get that. That makes sense. And the key, again, someone could steal the key in theory, but like not if it's biometric.
Yeah, and the other nice thing about passkeys is they're built on top of like an open standard, and so passkeys is essentially like a rebranding for WebAuthn. It's basically the same thing. The only main difference is that passkeys are generally aimed at things that could be synced and that use the quote unquote platform authenticators, and that's the authenticators that are built into our devices, instead of things like roaming authenticators, which are like a YubiKey.
Okay.
So it's like consumer rebranding of authentication mechanism.
Got it. And do passkeys solve like the problems with account recovery?
Yeah, I think this is like the really interesting thing that we get into, right? Is like because we have this syncing now of, okay, we can back this up to our password manager. I'm going to have this on every device ever imaginable. I can also register multiple passkeys. Anywhere that you can add a passkey, you can add a passkey for each device that you might access that from. So like, cool, great. We only need passkeys ever again. Like we can just get rid of passwords and we've like solved this problem. We're done and I can go home. It's not that easy, right? Like we already talked about this in terms of like Roberta was mentioning, like the backup isn't always there. Like, should I just use my YubiKey more often? But then like how many people actually own a YubiKey? Like that is not the situation for a lot of consumer applications, that people are going to have these specialized devices. So we end up in this situation where a passkey might not work. We need to fall back to other options. And that's where we're still seeing a lot of websites falling back to either their existing password flow or something like an SMS OTP. So I think it's like helping, and it's definitely like a user-friendly option for authentication, but it's not the silver bullet yet.
Yeah. So like, what are the options for account recovery, given that like it's not, passkeys isn't enough on its own?
Yeah, I think there's it depends on how you want to frame the reason that you're using passkeys. And so I talked about how passkeys are like a really secure mechanism, right? And they're going to be a lot more secure than passwords. So if the reason that a company is migrating to passkeys is for that like strong security angle, you're going to want to think about that. Like, you're probably not just going to be like, okay, your passkey didn't work. Cool. Log in with your username and password and nothing else. But there's a lot of companies out there that are migrating to passkeys because they're a really user-friendly way to log in. And so it's a quickness side of things. And maybe it's that like cost savings option. And so they might be then falling back to something like an email or an SMS magic link to log in, because they just want to make sure the user gets access to their account as quickly as possible. Where if like a consumer bank has an issue with a passkey, like they might be like, okay, you need to re-verify your identity by reproving, like doing like a document verification, like upload your your ID and that kind of thing. So I think,
so I guess it's like a great first line of defense, but then depending on what your use case is, it might be as simple as like username, password, 2FA, or it could be as complicated as like.
So I think a couple of like consumer examples of companies that have added passkeys. So like Home Depot has passkeys that you can use now. And if you like don't log in with your passkey, it'll automatically fall back to sending you an OTP, either via email or SMS. Target has passkeys. If you don't log in with your passkey on Target, it will just like fall back to a password reset or a password, username, password login, or an OTP. So there's a lot of these like more consumer focused companies that are doing it from the security side of things.
Well, wait, wouldn't that be more the usability side? Since
sorry, that's what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
More on the usability side of things, like they're the ones that are falling back to some of these more usable options too. And I think there's a lot of like US consumer banks have not strongly adapted passkeys yet. I think there's still a lot of consideration because of the account recovery problem. And this is the reason that like we're talking about this now, is because this is what I talked about at Authenticate. And I had so many people come up to me after my talk and be like, you are tackling the problem that like no one wants to talk about, because there's so much like optimism around passkeys and people are so excited about it, and they should be, right? Like, this is a really good technology. Everyone is like very pro this technology, but there is this like consideration of like what happens when they don't work. And there's like a lot of just this optimism, like, yay, passkeys, and then not as much around the like, okay, but then what?
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of brought up that point. I think there was like an article. I think you may have shared it with us. I think we'll grab it up, because I was actually curious to kind of hear like what's like the sentiment, right? Like about like what's the sentiment around just like passkeys. So okay, let's scroll.
Okay.
I
stopped using passwords. It's great and a total mess.
Okay. Because I'm kind of
here to replace passwords, but they work. When they work, it's seamless in the future, but don't ditch your old logins just yet.
Well, I think this is like a very funny like take on it, right? Of like, when things work as expected, it's great. Like, you might not even know that you're using a passkey because they might not have been branded that way in the login experience. But then what happens when it doesn't? It gets a little messy.
No, it's interesting because it's like the reliability, because like, like you said, it's good tech, right? And I think, balancing good tech with also good business and good user experiences. So it's like, it's kind of interesting. So just to kind of hear the sentiment, what other things do you feel like you've been beyond just kind of like, I need it to work? What have you been kind of seeing as like responses from folks who are actually using these things?
Yeah, so I think there's the consumer side of it that is people are still a little skeptical, honestly, in terms of like passkeys, just from talking to people, like whether that's like in my real life or like through my job, which I guess is also my real life. So like I was talking to like my Uber driver the other day and he's like, I think that like SMS OTPs are just like, we've cracked it. These are great. They're so easy to use. And I'm like, listen, as an employee of Twilio, I could not agree with you more, but there's a lot of people that don't feel that way, right? And then there's also like the developer experience side of things. And so I think there's it's really easy to send an SMS one-time passcode, especially when you use the Twilio Verify API, but it's not as easy to set up and integrate passkeys because it's just like a more complicated technology. And you know, we also have an API for this that makes it a lot easier to integrate than if you build your own, but it's still the type of thing that there's a lot of moving parts. There's a back end, there's a front end, there's an authenticator, there's the side of it that you talked about with like, how do you do this passkey syncing and all of that? I'm sorry, I was just checking Roberta Bull's latest question.
Yeah, go for it.
Gotta see what we got. No, that's good. Let's see.
Exos started allowing some people to use passkeys. Some, also not the resounding endorsement I'd want. Touche.
I was like, this is how not online I am sometimes now. I was like, X, like, is that like just an example? Like you're just using like a filler? Not like that's an actual company now.
Like is that
thank you, Elon.
Is that like, is that a company? Who knows?
The company formerly known as Twitter. Yeah.
Yes.
I figured that out.
Yeah.
There's also a link to a really great article that I can highly recommend about passkeys.
Is it Passkeys 101?
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you heard of the author? I don't know.
Oh, wait, that's not the right view. That's better.
Nope. Okay, cool. I don't know if you've heard about this. Like, have you seen this post, Kelley? Have you?
Passkeys 101. What are they and how they work?
Golly,
we'll have to interview the author one day.
I know. I've heard great things.
Yeah. You go through what are passkeys? How do they work? You also have a few demos. Like I know I have this demo I can pull up really quick, which shows. Hold on, let me get my screen right so I can see what's going on. So like this passkey, so I can like put in a phone number, and then if it'll, if I hit continue, it'll prompt me to create a new passkey. Maybe, yeah, you guys can see that, right? Cool. So there we go. Like it's at a tool.io, created a passkey.
And that's actually I think one of the confusing things that happens is like, this is your one password manager.
I just switched it to take one pass. Here's what happened.
Yeah. But like, it's like new item or update existing. Like this is not actually like, it's so confusing.
No. Well, here's the problem I was having is one password was, so we use at Twilio, I don't think this is the problem. We use like Okta for authentication at Twilio.
Yeah.
Generally, it works well. One password, which I use personally and for all my passwords there, was putting a step in Okta to say, do I want to use the one password passkey? So I'd actually turned off passkeys on one password because of the whole Okta issue. And so I just turned them back on so I could see, you could either update existing or create a new item. If I update existing, save, it's there.
Cool.
I'm logged in. Nothing happens. But this is just a demo.
I mean, it's kind of like a magical demo. Like you didn't see anything happen, but like it is happening.
Yeah, look, I can just, all I had signed with passkeys. It says this one you want to use. Bam, there, and it already my one password's unlocked. You can see here it's unlocked, and I think that's why it's not asking me for biometrics.
A demo that works. Wow.
Like if I lock this, I bet you it'll. Here, I bet you now it'll ask me for biometrics. Yeah, see? Unlock one password.
Okay, so we also shared the link in chat.
And you have that code somewhere, right, Kelley?
Yep.
That's on the Code Exchange. So you can find it on GitHub too. And let me see, like, I think.
Okay, we have
Yeah, I just shared
Yeah.
a gist in chat too. So this is an interesting one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
and so the link that Bilori sent out, that's I don't know how you say that username, but
That's
It's me.
Bianca.
Oh, that's
It's me.
you? I didn't even know
Bilori.
that.
I know, it's great. It's great. It's my internet persona, Bilori.
I love it.
I got mine too.
That's just like my full use of the first and last name. A demo that works. Sauce. Today I learned. But anyway, that link anyone can look at, and you can create a passkey. The gist that I just shared. Actually, Alex, this is an interesting one. If you want to like open this up and screen share it.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about passkeys is there's like a few different components that you need to use them, and a lot of this is built on top of this like open source front end web framework, or not framework but web API, browser API around WebAuthn. And so that navigator credentials create is something that anyone can type into a browser. And so if you copy this entire bit here and just like open
everything?
up everything, and then open up your developer console on any website. Like you can do it on GitHub right here.
Developer tools or resource? I guess it doesn't matter.
Developer tools. So like paste this into your console. Yeah, and run this. Don't copy and paste. I'm telling you to do it.
It's really not liking it.
Go to like example.com or something.
Okay.
All right, zoom in.
Maybe GitHub is like really
being a hater.
Example domain. There we go.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually the domain that I used for this. And so you can see some of the code there.
No, don't paste. It doesn't like it.
Interesting.
Wow. Wait, it just says warning.
Yeah, but it won't let me. Oh, hit enter to allow pasting.
Okay.
Look, but that was good friction.
Oh, type allow pasting below.
Oh, okay.
That's good. That's actually good friction, you know?
Okay, so I let passkeys happen.
Yeah. And so like you can see some of the stuff it's doing, right? Like, this is how you trigger that like browser, the browser action there. And so like you can see some of the and like any of you can paste this into your browser right now. And it's not actually like you could create a passkey like that's in your password manager and it would save there, but it's not actually going to authenticate anything because you need that server side too that's going to be communicating with it. So like I can create this and like have a passkey on google.com that says my username is A Goldman at like google.com, but that's not going to do much.
Yeah, because no one's looking for that passkey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's like some interesting things in here that you can see, like the RP down there that has example.com in it. And so theoretically, this will only work for example.com. Yeah, this is the sample code that I was using to write the quick start for using our passkeys API.
When you write this, like so you're creating it and it's just like sitting there on your machine. What's the other side of the like equation? Like how is the whatever website that's prompting this getting the information so that they know how to authenticate with you?
Yeah. So then once you create this, it creates it timed out for you, but if you do it again, it will paste the public key credential that this is creating. If you actually like create a passkey for this,
like
so
it's saved here.
That, yeah. So you can see there, it creates this public key credential. This has some information in it. It has an ID of the credential. This is what is included. This is the public key side of the like public key cryptography, the asymmetric cryptography. And so once that gets created in the browser, the public key is not terribly secret. You can then send that via an API request to the server. The server then will store the public key that then it can use to create new authentication challenges that will be signed by the browser to do that authentication handoff.
Okay. Got it. So this private key is the key. And so when it basically, once it's created, you store it somewhere and you use that as the kind of like the lock, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That makes sense.
That is not the private key. That's the public.
This is the public key.
The whole thing. I don't know exactly how it's encoded, but
Yeah, there's all these weird.
I mean, this is part of the
buffers
reason that I think like using like a managed service like Verify Passkeys is like ultimately good for some of this stuff. Is it doesn't make you be an expert on public key cryptography in order to confidently use this.
It's not the direction you wanted to go in. Like, wow.
Yeah.
That's real. It's honest. Different priorities.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
I took a class my freshman year of college on cryptography, and I thought that I was going to just get to be like Sydney Bristow and Alias and like solve cool puzzles. But it was actually like there was a kid in my class that had gotten a full ride scholarship from the NSA to be in college. And he was in that class. It was a lot of math proofs, and it was not what I expected.
That's honest.
Yeah, I read Cryptonomicon, which is like a Neil Stephenson book that like it makes cryptography seem so sexy and cool. Like a bunch of the characters carry around matching decks of cards because like a deck of cards seems very ubiquitous. Like you're not going to think anything of somebody having a deck of cards, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh, actually that deck of cards is a one-time like crypto or encryption decryption tool. Yeah, exactly.
Math proofs are awesome. Yeah, when I learned that
I love math
proofs could have 3 lines, that was.
Ooh, therefore, yeah.
I used to know how to do math proofs.
Revertibles. Thanks for bringing D&D back in. Deck of just one thing. That's right. An allusion to the deck of many things for D&D folks. But yeah, that is I love puzzles and that stuff too, and ciphers and all those. So yeah, I'm in to fun solving those with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so
cool. So you built out that example, which people can use to do those. So yeah, what? I
was scrolling on the passkeys page, and then the tweet or the whatever. It was like I just accidentally swallowed my YubiKey, and I was like, it was just reminding me of revertibles earlier, being like, well, why can't we depend on
Yeah, what if you eat your YubiKey?
Yeah.
What happens then? Revertibles? Huh?
Yeah.
What are we gonna do?
Like,
yeah. So that's why I was. I was just like, clearly. So clearly, it's just a reminder to check out that blog post because you don't know what you'll find about passkeys, about life, about the dietary preferences of folks that just accidentally swallow YubiKeys.
You roll it. If you eat a D20, you become a really slow dice tower. That is true.
No,
yeah.
That's real.
It's just if you swallow YubiKey, it's just very slow off.
One thing I've talked about in my talk on account recovery for passkeys is that forced waiting periods are sometimes a nice thing. Mm-hmm. So if somebody tries to get re-access to their account, you make them wait 3 to 5 days before you will grant them access again. Yeah,
digestion.
How long does it take to pass
digestion?
Yeah. I will say that the forced recovery is not fun when you have a toddler, because they get a hold of your phone and buttons, and it's like you're locked out for 20 minutes. It's like, well, that's great.
But I like the 20 minutes versus the 2 to 3 days, because like that feels like more of like you're in a timeout, okay, with your phone at this point, versus the like we're taking this away. And I'm like, I was here in the first place because I kind of needed access. This is not really helping.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. No, I'm all the things.
Are there any brands, Kelley, that you either use in your personal life or have you seen at Twilio that you think are just like doing it right? That they've figured out this authentication thing. I like how they're doing it. It feels seamless. It feels secure.
I mean, I think this is like such a funny question because even as someone in this industry, I feel like the people that are doing it right are the people I never think about.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And this is the trick with authentication is no one is ever coming to your website for its authentication. They are coming to do something else. And you need to have enough security theater there so that they feel secure. Like this is something that I think is a challenge when it comes to some of these background authentication methods, like we talked about, of like, how do you tell somebody that you are
How do they know it's
authenticating
me?
them?
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing with like iPhone, like Face Unlock or Touch ID, any of that. Like they do not need to show you that graphic of your face getting like scanned and checked. That is security theater so that you feel secure and you feel like something is happening. That being said, I will give a couple of examples. I think Cloudflare does authentication well.
Shout out to Craig.
They were
He's
one
holding
of the
the
first,
whole company.
They were one of the first adopters before Craig worked there.
I'm
just saying shout out to Craig, he works there. I'm not saying he did their security.
No, I'm just cracking up because whenever someone's like, yeah, shout out to that one person that like is just
Craig had nothing to do with their security, but like he's that
But we love Craig.
Yeah.
They were
Ricky and
so they rebranded as passkeys there, so I think they do a really good job. I think GitHub also does a really good job. One of the things
GitHub does do a very good job.
Yeah.
I think GitHub's the first one I printed out recovery keys for.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this is actually important.
Yeah. Recovery keys are an interesting one too, because I've always been very skeptical in terms of like how necessary or how well those work, because like where do you store them, right? Like I've had people tell me they like put them in their safe. Yeah.
I put them in my safe. What am I gonna do? Like, I don't know. I don't go into my safe a lot. There's not a lot in there. But like
how many people have a safe, first of all, and how many people like then put printed out versions of recovery codes in them? Wow. There isn't like a standard for this, but no. Anyway, anecdotally, we have a customer that has given us their numbers for how often their recovery codes are used for their authentications, and it's like thousands a week. And so I think this again like gets back into, and that's a company that's doing like millions of logins frequently, but as much as you can make this a self-service process for people, that is a really good situation, because then it saves you money, it saves your users frustration. There's lots of benefits there. Also, like recovery codes are pretty cheap to implement.
Yeah.
Like it's one time you give people some codes, you have a database that stores them somewhere, but like it's not
I also
too much of a heavy lift.
I definitely store some recovery codes of things that are less important just in 1Password, which is kind of silly too, because like, well, 1Password stores the password. So like,
yeah,
what's happening?
We just put our lives in the hands of
when your recovery code becomes a standard login flow.
Yeah.
Something's gone wrong.
No, I've had this conversation with people too about like, okay, so like, where do I store my passkeys? Do I put them in like my password manager, but that also has all my passwords? So then like, am I literally putting all my eggs in one basket? But I mean, it's kind of like, my phone, like I also have my like wallet on my phone, right?
There you go. That's a lot of eggs in a basket.
Risky.
All of my eggs in one basket, but the convenience is nice.
Yeah.
And also, if like somebody gets access to my phone, I'm probably screwed anyway. So
here's a question, and I don't know if you can answer this one, and I don't even know if it's a good question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. How does like
what
Web
a great
3...
intro?
Well, I just don't know. Like I'm not sure, but like how does like Web3 and like some of the crypto stuff affect all these authentication things? And
the way that it's come up the most for me is that like people need strong authentication for their crypto wallets.
Got it. Okay.
We've seen it more in that aspect of it than people using like decentralized storage or some kind of like Web3 API to do authentication, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Got it. That makes okay. So it's more the other way around. It's like, because I mean that's the thing. Like wallets, like if you're storing your own wallet, it's decentralized. That's hard and it's scary because like what happens if we lose that USB and like. So yeah, I guess you're looking at the other way around. Like, well, actually, we need to decentralize. Like, we're gonna end up centralizing these things anyways. So we're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason that like Coinbase as a website became like a centralized repository for your decentralized crypto wallet. Like,
yeah.
It turns out
I may or may not use a centralized. I may or may not use the centralized. Really nice. Yeah, that's true. So, I do like this.
I do
the
too.
convenience is nice, and I'm probably screwed. Kelley, security evangelist. Yeah. But I think that's a really great point. It's what what can you do? Like, what's an acceptable level of unsecurity that is still as secure as as you want to be, while still creating the most user-friendly experience? And like passkeys kind of are that, because they just magically work.
Yeah.
I'm
and
like
with my phone, like I'm a millennial, I always have it on me. So
right.
Hold it.
If I lose it, I'm going to notice real fast.
That is true.
True. And then you probably have something else that has Find My on it. You can click a little button and it'll make some noise and you'll find it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is that not adulthood? It's like, we have to balance. Am I screwed? I probably a little likelihood of like, it's pretty horrible, but I do like it. I mean, that's how I felt with Clear. I'm sorry. I used to be very like, no to Clear. My eyes are precious, my fingerprints. And then one good day at the airport, I was like, enough is enough. I need to get through this line. The TSA pre-check lines are too long, I guess, at this point.
Denver's the weird spot where TSA is faster than Clear. But my first job was at a data center, and it was a big deal because with a data center, because it's I mean, there's so many layers of security, but like you had to get in the front door, you had to show your ID and everything else, but then to get into the actual physical data center, there was this like giant tube, and one side would open. You'd scan your badge, so you had to have a badge. You'd scan your badge, one side would open, you'd step in. It would, by you being in there, would try to make sure that you're not two people trying to get in at once, because it had a scale on it too. It would scan your eyes, and then once the eye scan closed, your door closed, you'd scan your eyes, and then once the eye scan closed, then the other door would open and you could get through. So it's like I was very used to the eye scanning and like those high levels of security. It is a little bit like an old school photo darkroom where you have to like spin the tube.
That also feels like something out of a movie.
I agree.
Honestly, I'm going to be fully honest. There were other ways in that didn't involve. There was every door had an eye scanner that you were required to use. Some of them were just normal doors. This was the main entrance because it was cool.
I will say
so much of the data center is theater. Yeah.
I mean, again, like it comes back to there's like some level of security theater with all of this. Like
totally.
I will definitely say, what is it? So I've been to the Coinbase offices, and I will say I learned a lot about like even just getting into that office was like multiple layers of just like their physical office. So I thought that was also interesting of just like, yeah, very, I mean, you weren't scanning your eye, but they were definitely very like, you don't know where you are. And like, they had to take physical security very kind of like serious in addition to just digital. So I thought that was also interesting. No, this is, man, I like Kelley. Truly, I don't know if you want to be a reoccurring ABK Abica on the stream. And just
was the AB Kelley show.
AB Kelley, yeah, duh. So no,
you were just Kelley. AB testing to find the right guest.
Wow. See, wow, that was smooth. No, this is like there's just like so much happening, and it's like I don't know. I know we use the word like ruthless prioritization. Here at ruthless
prioritization.
Prioritization.
There you go.
I'm trying to say it quick.
That's Bianca. That's ruthless pronunciation.
Oh, y'all! I promise we are not under the influence of anything. I think it's the authentic Kelley joy. But I guess what comes to mind, which is like there's so many different layers of this world of security, and I think like how do you find your lane, your space, like how do you not get caught up in all the things? But yeah, I guess I'm just kind of curious, Kelley, like, when you think about how you focus on authentication and identity, like focusing on that, but like, yeah, just kind of thoughts for folks not to get caught up in the security storm. I don't know
I mean, there's always going to be like an element of realism that plays into this. Like for all of us here, like even me, who is like a somewhat like public facing woman on the internet, like, there's a level of scariness there, but like I am not, Joe Biden or Elon Musk or someone that like has a very public profile, there is something that there's difference between your personal profile in terms of how you want to think about security. And so I always encourage people to like lean back into the realism side of things. When I talk to, people outside of this industry, I often will say, make sure that you have 2FA turned on for your email and your bank accounts. And if you do that, you're going to be ahead of the game of 90% of people out there, which is like a little sad, but yeah, I think it's up to us as like the industry professionals to then push authentication forward in a way where people don't have to think about that, where I don't have to be giving the advice to the consumers. What we should be doing is focusing on putting the onus on the companies for protecting people. And that's where I think it's like really great that, companies like Google, they've moved so much of their users over to enrolling passkeys. They haven't gotten rid of passwords yet, but they're doing a lot of really good work for everyone out there with a Gmail account to make it a lot harder for anyone that isn't the person that owns the account to get access to that. And I think that's where we need to like keep focusing the conversation.
Okay. I like that. We did get a question in chat from
which Kelley basically just answered. But what is enough security for an individual? What is enough for your customers? Data protection, and what is affordable for either?
Yeah. This feels like a classic hypothetical, like from Robertables of. I think you're asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. I wanted to surface it because we want to acknowledge our questions in chat. No, I think what's interesting is just like identifying like what makes sense and like what are the questions that you're trying to answer. Yeah. And I think if you're trying to answer every question around security, good luck.
I think Robertables has a nice point there too in terms of like what is affordable for either, and like that can be both like time and money too, right? Yeah. Like if you're Coinbase, your users are going to be so much more willing to put in additional effort to protect their accounts and willing to put in additional time to get access to their accounts because they know that you're protecting something really strong. Like if you're like pizzacompany.com that does pizza delivery, like there's legitimate security concerns that like happen with those types of companies. There's a lot of like money laundering and like testing of fake credit cards that happens with those types of companies, but that's a different problem than it is for like making sure that you are delivering the right pizza to the right person. The person on the other end of it doesn't care that you're like a potential target for someone that's trying to test gift card balances. Like they just want to order their pizza and they're not going to like be willing to have a 3 to 5 day waiting period,
You know what actually came
up?
It's
the cool off time before your pizza comes.
Yeah, it's also like what needs to be a group project versus what needs to be a company priority. It's like there are certain things that like as a company tend to this and take care of it, but when we're all subjected to kind of, everyone, we all have to.
For the record, Robertables, I mean classic in terms of providing value. Like you are adding the commentary that we all need.
Yeah. You guys didn't agree. But okay. So I mean the Kelley show could go on for more and more hours, but oh my gosh, like this was so awesome. As always, an absolute pleasure, delight. Alex, any thoughts? What like
I think there's it's such a topic that like, as you said, like the people doing it right, you don't notice. It's one of those topics where like you don't want to think about it, but you got to. And especially if you're in the tech world, like you're thinking about it and you're aware of it and you're so on and so forth. And I just really appreciate the insights and bringing it up as a conversational topic because I think it's something we all need to be talking about and thinking about a little bit more. So thank you, Kelley.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yes, and chat, not giving y'all homework, but check out the blog. I feel like it kind of sums up a lot of stuff. What else? Share with a friend. Tell a friend to watch and learn about passkeys. Very important stuff. And
tell your friends about passkeys. Spread the good word of passkeys.
Yes, of course.
Hey, Kelley is the passkey evangelist. Let's be serious.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So yes, spread the good word about passkeys. But yes, and then also yes, if you have any questions for us, or if you have more questions for Kelley, feel free to kind of share them. We'll make sure she gets them. In the mean streets of Slack. But this was awesome as always, Kelley. Always a pleasure.
Did you just say the mean streets of Slack?
Yes.
People can't find us in Slack. We can find each other.
Yes.
Also, yeah.
Roberto will sense. Why are we all serious? We're you did make it without getting hangry, Alex. So this is a good sign.
Have you heard about the Lord and Savior passkeys and then kicked out of the HOA? Thank you, Robertables.
And on
that note, we'll say goodbye to Kelley. Thank you, Kelley. And then we hopefully we'll just a little quick wrap up. Ooh. I think I'm not sure if we'll be here next week or not.
We won't.
Bianca and I and Chef Brent will be in Portland, doing some filming, creating some awesome new content. We're so excited to share that with you in the coming weeks. But we're going to start, kind of revamping the Superclass content. So we're so excited to share that with you in a couple of weeks when that's all done. But we're in person filming next week. I don't think unless Chef Brent decides to do an in-person chat of we just had a request. A replacement show, Tofog and Friends. Chris, where you at?
You've been summoned.
This could be your moment. You've been summoned. So maybe we'll get a replacement show. Maybe we'll be able to have you guys check in for a little bit and see what we're doing there. We'll see. But thank you so much, everybody, for participating in chat. That was such a lovely conversation. And if not next week, we'll see you back here the week after for more A/B testing.